Let's bring in one of the winners from yesterday's reshuffle, Liberal MP Zoe McKenzie, who's been promoted to Assistant Minister for Education and Mental Health. Zoe, thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations on the role. You must be keen to get stuck into it now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show tonight. And indeed, I am thrilled to be joining the Shadow Ministry in these roles. It's particularly important, may I say, for my electorate of Flinders, where slightly more than 10% of people have suggested they have a long-term mental health issue. That's above the national average of 8.8%. And in the COVID years in particular, 40% of women and about 20% of men actually sought help for depression and or anxiety. So it disproportionately affects my electorate, and therefore I am really proud and excited to throw myself into this area of endeavour. I've also worked in education policy at both the federal and state levels before, so I'm really looking forward to getting back onto the tools in terms of education policy, and I'm really grateful to Sussan and to Ted for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing what you do with that position. Now, look, let's talk more broadly about the coalition. There's been a lot of criticism about the number of women in the shadow cabinet, given that senior women like Jane Hume and Sarah Henderson have been left out. Opposition Leader Sussan Ley defended the changes. This is what she said.
There are no scapegoats. Jane is a terrific and talented senator for Victoria and, of course, remains that. The team that I announced yesterday includes new faces because we are bringing a fresh approach. It's a new term in Parliament, it's a new leader, and we are going to do things differently.
Zoe, there's been criticism that given that there's been a cutback of women, it makes it harder now for the coalition. Do you agree with that? Does it make it harder for the coalition to try and win over more female voters?
Well, I'm still really proud that we've got our first female leader in the more than 80 years history of the Liberal Party. I think that is a fantastic achievement for Sussan Ley, who's been in the Parliament now for around 25 years. So I'm thrilled to be part of her first lineup as leader of the Liberal Party. Remember, we have some extraordinary women who are in the shadow cabinet: Karen Little, Melissa McIntosh, Anne Ruston, Michaelia Cash. Indeed, you know, I am a good friend of Jane Hume. She and I went to school together. I know she will come back. She's one of the most plain-speaking politicians we've got, exceptionally good at explaining policy. She will be back at some stage, but I recognise this is obviously a disappointment for her and indeed for Sarah Henderson too, who had done a power of work in relation to education.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We just need to see what happens with Jane Hume, but can't help but wonder, was she just punished for that work from home policy? That certainly appears to be the case. I want to ask you about Net Zero 2050. I noticed your comments earlier today on Sky News. You said that you are optimistic that the coalition can continue to observe a net zero goal. How does that land, do you think, moving forward? You've got the Nationals wanting to look to drop Net Zero 2050, moderates like yourself wanting to keep a goal. Can the two of you work together, do you think, the Libs and the Nats, to try and come to a policy position on this?
I'm absolutely very confident that we will come to a policy conclusion on this. I speak to my National Party colleagues every day and we talk about the aspiration of net zero. Indeed, you know, I went to COP27 with Kevin Hogan, and what you see there is that the investment community, the global investment community, as well as the manufacturing community, is all moving to a net zero stance. So one way or the other, the global market, technology and energy development will trend towards a net zero outcome. The question is how we do it, and if we actually punish Australian industry by cutting off affordable, sustainable energy options too quickly. We've seen the Labor Party come to the party today finally on gas. So Murray Watt has approved that gas expansion. That's an important security measure for the West in particular, but we're going to need to do more of that. At least now, post an election, the Labor Party seems to be indicating a greater deal of honesty with the Australian people about the fact that you can't get there on wind and solar. You're going to have to include gas in the energy lineup, and net zero becomes an important factor, but not one which will destroy the Australian economy or indeed the environment where the National Party hold their seats. Those 28,000 kilometres of poles and wires were all going to go through National Party held seats. And so they're not opposed to net zero for the sake of being opposed to net zero. They're opposed to net zero for what it might do to their seats. But I still believe there's quite a bit of net zero sympathy, interest and intent amongst our National Party colleagues as well.
Well, look, I think that's going to be an interesting pathway forward, because it seems like there is a big split in how you try and strike that balance between, I know that, you know, the Liberals want to win back a number of Teal seats, but obviously the Nationals are looking after the country and the region. So we'll see how this progresses. Zoe McKenzie, nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening.